So, Mark, you are VP of Innovation here at Biblica. Biblica is many things. It's a 200-year-old nonprofit organization. It stewards as much intellectual property as one can ever imagine. So, dive into that a bit. Can you introduce yourself and introduce Biblica to the NFT.NYC audience? We can talk a bit about your thoughts on non-fungible tokens and all that is around that.
Yeah. As we like to say at Biblica, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. And I am Mark Finzel, VP of Digital Innovation at Biblica. And as you said, we are a 212 or so year old organization. Right. So we've been around for a long time. We handed out Bibles on Ellis Island. Wow. And now we are focused on the future, and NFTs and blockchain and all that is part of that. Yeah. My background, I'm mainly a technologist, and I've been in IT and digital marketing, digital innovation.
Yeah. You and I have talked a bit about, for 2 millennia, oftentimes, people of faith and organizations of faith have driven innovation. And yet in the last 50 or so years, that hasn't necessarily been the case. A lot of times it feels like faith organizations, nonprofits are catching up to what businesses and people in entertainment or politics or education are doing. So you have half a dozen people on your innovation team here. Can you give me some insight in terms of how you frame innovation and why you would try to lean into some of the newer opportunities like NFTs?
Yeah, well, like you said, for most of human history, Christians were the leaders when you look at the arts and science and many other areas. And in modern times, we've kind of fallen behind in many ways, as you said. And I want to get to the point where Christian organizations, nonprofits, those who are in the faith community are not just catching up, but leading the way. And I also think we're in a tremendous time of huge opportunity where there's more and more people around the world becoming Christians. But at the same time, we need to make sure that we're using the latest technology so that I like to say sometimes young people often see the Bible as a dusty old book, but there are stories and content in there that is so relevant to what we're dealing with today. And so I think, even in the NFT space and Web3 and all that, there's a lot of opportunities to make faith relevant to young people today.
Yeah. Well, we keep Bibles in glass cases here. No dust.
Yeah.
Let's talk about community. So one of the driving forces of Web 2 was centralized communities. How many billions of people can Facebook get on their platform? Hundreds of millions of people can Twitter get on their platform. Today, the focus is on decentralized communities, decentralized autonomous organizations, decentralized autonomous groups, and breaking up the power.
Yep.
You're in a unique position in that there's over 100 million people that engage with your intellectual property, your versions of the Bible on an annual basis. And you have, new people every single day, thousands and thousands, 10,000 people every day engaging and communicating with you in that fashion. Maybe you could give a little background on what the intellectual property and the publishing rights that you steward, and we can talk a bit about how you deal with such a global international community with almost 100 different languages that we're serving.
Yeah, so some of you may have heard an app called YouVersion, and one of the translations on there is a new international version of the Bible. And so Biblica created the NIV version of the Bible, and we are the copyright holders for that. And as you alluded to, the NIV is the most widely read Bible in the world. And YouVersion has just exploded in growth. They have they're about to pass 500 million downloads. It is amazing. And they also just have a huge amount of languages. One of the things you may know or may not know is that the Bible is the most translated book in the world. It's available in over 3,200 languages. Biblica has closer to about 80 languages. We focus on what we call gateway languages, which are the gateway to all the rest of the languages in the world.
And so you have 80 written, and then is it 30 or so that have audio
Yeah,
books
30
now.
to 35 audio, professionally produced audio
And
translations.
if anybody's watching this live or seeing the archive, thanks for your attention.
Yes.
And if you aren't familiar with things around Bible publishing, the Bible is 66 different books or letters.
Yep.
Written across 2,000 years, 3 continents, 3 major languages, from prostitutes to murderers to kings, right? A very eclectic group of people, wrote this content. So when the Bible is translated to 3,200 languages worldwide, it's not a book or a story. It's a collection of these 66 books. So you have either the whole Bible, or at least maybe a portion like the New Testament, available in 80 plus languages written, 30 plus languages audio. So let's talk about tech for a moment.
Yeah.
Because one of the things I talked with you about recently was that there are some blockchains that now will let you put mass amounts of content on the chain.
Yeah.
Where in the past, you would never put an audio book on the Ethereum chain, but now there's these new blockchains that are making these types of things available. And so one of the things with a faith community has been the concern that the Bible would be made illegal again, right? There's been times where the Bible's been burned in mass, or where people were told, well, you can't read that for yourself. You got to come to the mediator called a father or a priest or a rabbi, and this is the person that will connect you to God. And so Biblica is trying to make it available, as well as your peers, to anyone, that they can look at it themselves, the sacred scriptures, make their own decisions about how it impacts them and have easy access. And if there was ever a concern around centralized technology stopping people like YouVersion,
Right.
what if AWS and GCS and Azure, not to pick on any of them, what if a centralized cloud server said, we're done with YouVersion. We're not letting them distribute the Bible anymore. By putting content on the blockchain, maybe as NFTs, then maybe it's unstoppable, right? This unstoppable force. So can you give me some insights in terms of how you look at technology in the Web3 ecosystem as new ways of decentralizing this intellectual property that you have the copyrights for?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very real issue that some people are concerned about. And, I obviously don't want to wade into politics about whether or not that's going to happen, but I think we have seen cases where different kinds of content, and not even in the US, we've seen this in China. There were recently stories about the Quran getting removed from the app stores, and there's potential for that anywhere. So I love this idea of the decentralized blockchain. It is a huge amount of content. I don't remember the exact number. I'm sure someone in the comments will correct me, but there's something about somewhere around 750,000 words in the Bible. And so it's a lot of content to be out there. But I think there's a lot of potential if we could decentralize that, put it on the blockchain, like you said, make it impossible for any one entity, whether it doesn't matter their political affiliation or beliefs, is just so decentralized that no one person has control over it. The other piece of it that I really like is being able to validate authenticity of it, because especially as things get out there into the world, you don't necessarily know if maybe somebody's changing it. A lot of our texts in audios are under Creative Commons licensing, which we could maybe talk about. But how do you know if someone's taking that and modifying it? And we've talked a little bit about how blockchain could be a really good way to kind of down to the character level validate the authenticity of a piece of content.
It used to be such a manual process to maintain authenticity, and the maintenance of word for word, dot for dot. We call it tittle for tittle or something like that back in the day.
Jots and tittles.
Yeah, it was so significant. It was like such an intense manual job. And now technology can be doing some of that for you. Today you have many of your versions under Creative Commons in order to basically decentralize things in the Web2 ecosystem and in the modern ecosystem. So when you think about the next couple of years, if I say to you, NFTs in 2024, and you think about what could happen in terms of engaging with the communities globally, leveraging Web3 technology, and where could you fathom as an innovator things landing in the next couple of years with Biblica and all the things that you have to steward and be responsible?
Yeah, I mean, there are huge opportunities, and I'm really excited about this community. And I hope that I can talk with some of you about how we can leverage NFTs. A few things that come to mind. The first is crowdsourcing and gamification. So we have a lot of translations done, but there's actually still a lot of work to do. There's still thousands of languages out there that don't have a Bible, or maybe even don't have any written language. And so one of the things we've talked about doing is how can we leverage NFTs to gamify checking of scripture, translation of scripture, or even just creation of alphabets in languages that don't have them. Is there a way you could reward people for participation in the community through NFTs? We've also talked about consumption of content.
Right.
Like you mentioned, we have 30, 35 or so audio Bibles. Could we leverage NFTs as people consume content? I think this is
or even earning NFTs.
Earning
so
NFTs.
Instead of an ETH to buy this NFT, maybe they get an NFT or a collection of NFTs when they engage, right? So trying to gamify things and trying to create new utility around NFTs and trying to create new models as an innovator for other publishers, your peers in the spiritual atmosphere, but also peers just in other publishing arms. That think to themselves, wow, look what Biblica is doing or is attempting, can we do something similar to them?
Right. Yeah, I think there's a huge potential there. And also a lot of our consumers of content are in parts of the world where they're in poverty, and this is maybe a stretch, but I mean, are there ways that NFTs could even bring people out of poverty?
Yeah.
Maybe, like I said, it might be a bit of a stretch, but it'd be amazing if we could find a way to connect those dots. And then the one more that comes to mind is, as a nonprofit, we're very heavily donor based, and we are mostly, I would say, in the traditional donor model of major donor fundraising, mass fundraising, things like that. But obviously, we're seeing a lot happening in the NFT space of creating real value. And so we've talked about, are there ways that we can create real value with NFTs, maybe creating NFTs of unique Bibles. You see some here in the background that are one of a kind, and other kinds of interesting content that could be part of a donor model.
Right? Imagine there's unlimited options, but there's all these artists, there's all these creators out there. What if you could make what you have copyrights to available to them, and then part of the model goes toward the money helping to fund things like new alphabets for languages that don't have it. There's so much good that Biblica does outside of just distributing the Bible, but also just doing so many things for the global community, and many of which are impoverished. Well, we like to keep these short, to shareable that way. How about some final thoughts from you? Maybe instead of speaking directly to the NFT.NYC community, which you're very familiar with, because I've been telling you about the last few years, maybe to other publishers, your peers. If you had a word to give people that you rub shoulders with that haven't really considered NFTs, Web3, blockchain, decentralized tech, what might you share with them?
Well, I would say that we need to unleash Scripture. And there's a long history of Scripture being bound up in restricted license agreements and royalty arrangements. And one of our biggest passions, we call it radical generosity. We believe God has been generous to us, and so we want to be generous in the way we distribute our content. And that's why we've released as much as we can under Creative Commons. And so I would challenge publishers, what are ways that you can be radically generous and freely give, especially your scripture, Bible-related content, which I think unlocks the door, because in order to use all that Web3 stuff, you need the content to start with. And if that content's locked up in all these restrictive agreements, you can't really do much with it. And so I think we've seen incredible things with this posture of radical generosity. And so I would encourage the publishing community to do the same thing and to trust that God will release the resources as you're radically generous.
Thanks for jumping in.
Yeah,
I think you have a unique voice on our YouTube account, because most of the folks that I'm interviewing are embedded into the community, and for those that are watching this, I'm coming close, so I can turn it off. I'm coming close. If you don't know me, my name's Ian Utile. I am one of the co-producers at NFT.NYC. I thank you for your attention. I'll be back again. Actually, I have like 15 of these one-on-one interviews today. So if you like this content, jump in and join us for the ride. And I'll be back again soon.